This is one of my oldest friends in the world. We actually went to college together, played softball together. It was softball. Don't try to man it up. It was what it was. And so I'm so glad that he comes here. And Pastor Otto says, he's one of the missionaries we support. That's so true. But you guys who have been here for a while, you know that in the same way, La Fuente, through Pastor Josh and Pastor Luis, they support us. They support us. They come and encourage our faith and let us know what God's doing in the world. So thank you for being here. And he's going to be preaching in Jesus 101, which is sort of cool because I told him he had to. All right.
Awesome. So I totally tell people we played baseball together in college, by the way, just so you know. In Mexico, they don't know softball, so I can say baseball because I'm like, and I justify it by saying, well, they won't know what softball is, and it sounds way cooler to say that we played baseball in college, but it was intramural softball. I mean, it was anyone could play. So, but no, I just coming to Victory Life is always an incredible experience for me. I love the Andersons and so many families. I mean, there's so many I could name, but especially your pastors, Matt and Gina. I hope that you guys understand what you have in your pastors. It's one of those things where sometimes you can be so close to a situation where you might not fully appreciate. Me, I live thousands of miles away, and Matt is a voice in my life that I rely on, respect. The other day I texted him. True story. I texted him. I was like, I'm sending out the bat signal, and in this scenario, you are Batman. I need to talk to you, right? So that's how I do it. You could free to use that if you want to. It might be a little weird, but he is that important for me to have him in my life. And so can we give them a round of applause, Matt and Gina and AJ and CJ's over there. CJ's the man. Still waiting on CJ to come to Tepic. It's going to happen one of these days. But this is what I want to do. I just want to give you a real quick update on Mexico. Then we're going to jump into the Jesus 101 series. But as Matt said, Heart for Mexico is the name of our organization. We have 4 heartbeats. We did a lot of work on this, a lot of creative thinking. That's why we call it Heart for Mexico. All right? And so a lot of coffee before that conversation, before we came up with that big reveal. But we basically are 4 heartbeats, which are church planting. That honestly, for me, is what truly drives what we're doing down in Mexico is the church planting. We believe that with the local church, the other ministries can flourish because of the local church. So La Fuente is the name of our church in Mexico. It means the fountain. So church planting is one of our 4 heartbeats. Our orphanage, Nana's House, and we have a Bible school called the Heart for Mexico School of Missions where we train future pastors and leaders. It's like a college level, post-high school level Bible school. We every year have Americans that come down and take part in that. And then we have our 4th heartbeat is our short-term mission teams that we host, and that's what many of you guys have experienced. You've been down, and like Pastor Matt said, now we're about 10 years worth of Victory Life teams, and Pastor Matt was on the first team that went down, and we truly mixed cement by hand to lay a foundation. And just to give you an idea, in this Jalisco church, we had just gotten the land. As the years have gone by, your church has helped us buy additional property to combine into that church, and help with the remodel. You guys have been down several times. And now, on this last trip, we were thankful to get air conditioning installed in the main auditorium. Who would have thought that day, those days when we were down there just mixing cement, it was brutally hot, that one day you would be responsible for putting air conditioning in the auditorium where that stands. It's truly awesome how, as the years have gone by, you guys have contributed to that church. And now it's a thriving congregation. It truly is. I get to preach there every now and then, and it is a great church. And you guys, your hand has truly been on that kind of from the beginning. And so the other, as far as church planting goes today, it's 10 o'clock in Tepic, and in an hour, we will be launching church number 24 in a city an hour north of Tepic called Santiago. And so today is literally the first service. They've had monthly interest meetings now for the last several months, 3-4 months. But today they're going to have week 1. There's a young couple that have gone through our Bible school that's going to pastor that church. And so today we're praying for them. Hopefully they want to launch with 100. So hopefully it happens. And I'm excited to hear how it went. But there's just always something happening. In our orphanage, we just 2 weeks ago received a 20-day-old baby for the first time. So as of today, I guess he's like 34 days old, 35 days old. But for us, that was a huge thing. I mean, we've had, usually 5-year-olds are the minimum, but there was this need. They talked to us. And so I'm thankful because I'm honestly never going to even probably physically touch the child. Like, I'm not going to change a diaper. I'm not going to feed this kid. I saw him once, and but I'm thankful that I'm part of a team that can accept a 20-day-old 20-day-old child and feed him and clothe him. And you know what an amazing story. I'm thankful that the organization exists, because now that 20-day-old kid's entire destiny is changed. I mean, we believe that he will grow up now in an atmosphere where he's loved and he's blessed, and his story, what the enemy meant for harm, will be redeemed for good, and he will have a future and a hope because of what God is doing through Heart for Mexico. So I'm excited. Our Bible school, we've got more students than ever this year. There's 45 students going through our Bible school, so those are future leaders and people that we want to see pastoring churches or leading in their business or whatever they decide to do. But we're thankful, and God is truly moving. And so thank you, Victory Life, for what you're doing as a part of that, for being open to missions. And I love Bill and Melanie and their heart, and I know that this church is a missions church. And so that I'm thankful for that. It's so easy nowadays to be focused on our own thing, and thank you to you all for being a part of what God is doing through this. So we could talk all day about missions, and we can if you want to see me afterwards, but I'm excited about Jesus 101. I'm excited about what you guys are doing as a church in this series. I listened to Pastor Matt's message the other day. I'm a fan of Pastor Matt and his preaching. Pastor Matt has been a pastor since college, okay? Before the title was given out, we actually had a Bible study in college, and he would teach, and it was like, man, it would always blow my mind. I still remember the message from the first Bible study we had in college. I mean, so you guys are blessed with such a dynamic leader, speaker, and it's so cool to see what you guys are doing. And so I want to just keep it going. We've made it to Mark chapter 4, right? So those of you who have been here every week, the black belts, if you will, those of you who have been here and have been following along, you know what's up. If it's your first Sunday, it's all good. But now we've made it to Mark chapter 4, and we're working our way through the book of Mark. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this opening passage, and then we're going to pray and just jump into what God has for us. So it says in Mark 4, and let me just say this is kind of a popular story. If you've been around church, then you've heard this. If you've not, then cool, you're going to hear it today, you'll get familiar with it today. If you have heard this, do me a favor and just kind of like suspend your whatever belief you have about it, preconceived ideas, notions, whatever, and and just try to hear it for the first time. Act as, maybe it's the first time you've heard this, and we're going to read this. Mark 4, verse 1 says, "Again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. It says, the crowd that gathered around him was so large that he got into a boat and sat in it out on the lake, while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. He taught them many things by parables, and in his teaching said, 'Listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. And as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. It says some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants so that they did not bear grain. And still other seed fell on the good soil. It came up, grew, and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, and some 100 times." All right, let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you for Victory Life Church. Thank you for Pastor Matt and his family, and God, all that you're doing here. I just pray you'll bless this place, bless this church, multiply what is happening here, and just bless this time we have together. Lord, I just pray whatever struggle, doubt, painful situation that's happening, Lord, I pray you just give us a peace right now. We cannot do this without you. We don't want to do this without you, Lord, and I just pray that your hand will be on this time in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So the Bible talks about a lot of different spiritual gifts, and I feel like I personally have this spiritual gift. I don't know if you do as well, you might. But like the gift to be in conversation with someone, have no idea what they're talking about, but pretend like you do, right? Like, I mean, it's totally a useful thing. Like you can be talking to someone and they're just going for it and they're intense, and you have lost, or for whatever reason, and you're standing up and you're like, yep, and then all of a sudden you need to know what they're talking about because they ask you a question or they say something, and you're in a bad place, right? And I don't know if you've ever had to admit, like, I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, it's such an uncomfortable place to be, right? But we've all been there. And when we see Jesus teach in parables, and you guys are, you have a lot of Mark left to go. I love how the disciples so often are like, yeah, no, right? Like, what, right? And so when you read this parable, what immediately stands out is the end. So even if you're confused, even if it's like, wait, the path and there's seeds and there's thorns, when he gets to the end, And he says, and there will be a harvest, right? And it'll be 30, 60, or 100 times. So even if they didn't know what was going on, when he got to that would have taken all of their attention. They would have been like, wait, what? I mean, that is a ridiculous harvest. So anyone living in this day and age that's familiar with farming, or they would, when he said 30% at the end there, they'd be like, 30%? It'd be like me saying, man, I'll give you $1 million if you go get me a pop. You'd be like, $1 million? For real? So it was an exaggeration, and that was his low number. So he said 30, 60, or 100 times. So they're all thinking like, what are you talking? That's amazing. Like there's a crazy possible harvest, or there's a lot of production, but they didn't get the other stuff, right? And they were like, and I love that about the disciples. I mean, it truly gives us room. And we should all feel like we have room to be like, man, yes, but no. No, but yes, right? Like, I get it, but I don't get it. And so they end up asking him about it. And I love, and I want to throw Mark 4:9 up here. I love this verse. I think this verse is so key in our walk with Christ. Or even if you're here and you don't even consider that you have a walk with Christ, when he says in Mark 4:9, he says, then Jesus said, whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. That's a constant throughout the Gospels. It's a constant throughout his ministry. He'll remind us of that a lot. In some places it says, he who has eyes to see, let him see. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. There's this idea, it's like, man, God is truly speaking. He's truly working. It's happening. You guys are in a place where the word of God is going forth. There's amazing worship. Like it's here. But if you're not careful, if you don't have ears to hear or eyes to see, you can miss it, right? And so the disciples are like, hey, what? The seeds and the thorns? And I picture them, because it says, that they privately asked Jesus for some help, right? So you know that in front of everyone, they're like, yes, right, thorns, right? And then they got with Jesus, and they're like, so seriously, though, what does that mean, right? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so Jesus explains himself in 4:13. I'm going to read on. It says, then Jesus said to them, don't you understand? You can low-key sense the frustration, right? Don't you understand this parable? Like, are you serious? How then will you understand any parable? It says, the farmer sows the word. Some people are like seed along the path where the word is sown. As soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. Others, like seeds sown on rocky places, hear the word and at once receive it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. And he gives some examples. He says, when trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. Still others, like seeds sown among thorns, hear the word, but the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and desires for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. And now he's going to repeat himself. And he's going to emphasize this again. He says, others, like seeds sown on good soil, hear the word and they accept it and produce a crop, some 30, some 60, and some 100 times. So he says it again. In case they're like, that was weird, 30, 60, he says it again. No, he's talking about production, and there's this idea that it can happen. But the big idea here, and he says it, he even uses the word Satan. Satan comes, the accuser. Satan comes, and he's kind of just reiterating this idea that you and I have a spiritual enemy. We have an enemy, and his weapon is a lie. Like, he is there, and he will lie. That is his weapon. That is what he will do. He will lie to us. And the accuser, or Satan, will come. And he's just explaining. And I love the idea that in these parables, he's not telling you, and I feel like this has been misinterpreted throughout the years in different Christian circles. He's not telling you, like, oh, man, some of you, you're thorns, and, you're thorny soil, and too bad, so sad for you. It's what it is, right? Or you're the rocky soil, and that's not. It's kind of like when you tell your kid, hey, don't touch the stove because it's hot, you're going to burn yourself, right? And then you're not telling them, hey, you're touching the stove. You're a stove toucher. You will always be a stove. You're telling them what can happen, right? What does happen to some people and what can happen if you're not careful. So he's just giving these examples. He's like, hey, some people, they're like the path. I mean, the seed comes, the word comes, the invitation comes. And Satan, or the accuser, through lies, because that is his weapon. The Bible's clear, John 10:10, John 8:44. He's a liar. So that comes and it takes the seed. And so that's basically just pure disinterest. You know, the seed comes and you hear the word and there's this lie that's like, man, are you serious? It's 2019. You're going to go to church? Like, for real? You guys are going to give money? Like, you know, and you're going to do this, or you're going to spend your time. And it's just a lie, and comes and tries to rob the seed immediately. It's right on the path. And he just goes through it. Says there's other places, other soil. And spoiler alert, like, we are the soil, okay? And there is a test. Like, there is testing that's taking place. And there is production on the other side of the test. And that's what he's explaining here. And he says, you know, some of you are like soil with rocks, where it's like, man, I mean, you hear it, and this is good news, right? It's like, wow, God, and we're forgiven, and there's all this opportunity. And then all of a sudden, as soon as it costs you something, if there's trouble involved, or it costs you something, or it takes away maybe one of the things that before provided comfort for you, or now there's a conviction in your hearts. I remember, you guys want to know something? I didn't say this in the first service. Truly, I remember the first time I truly felt convicted about something, and you know who I was with? Pastor Matt. True story. And I tell this story all the time in Mexico. I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do what I used to do anymore. Like I can't. There's not this, and so that when that happens, and it happens to all of us at some point, you have a decision, right? You have a decision of, it's like, oh man, whatever. I mean, you start to doubt. You let the lies get in that, I mean, this isn't for you, or what? You're going to be a Christian? Are you serious? Like, are you? Is this a joke? I mean, or you hear about giving, or Pastor Matt gets up here and talks about, hey, for $35, somebody who literally cannot have the Bible can have the Bible. And as soon as that opportunity is like, man, but $35, I could totally go to Red Lobster and get like the shrimp Admiral's Feast, right? Do they still call it that? I remember the Admiral's Feast. Everything tastes the same. It's all just fried, right? Anyway, so there's different types of seafood. I don't know. But like, so when it costs you something, right, all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't know, I'm not so sure anymore. Like, it sounded good, right? And so there's these lies like, yeah, this isn't for you. You could do something way better with your money. Save this, do that. And so he's just setting up, he's what he's doing is he's revealing the lies of the enemy. And then he talks about the thorny places. Like, yeah, some people receive the word and they're all excited about it until, like, there's all these different worries or other things fighting for our attention. And so it really comes down to these lies of, like, disinterest. Get you disinterested, right? Make you uncomfortable or envious. He talks about the thorny soil, and he's talking about, he's talking about deceitfulness of wealth, worries of this life. So all of a sudden, if it's like, no, I need to get mine, right? And that is a true temptation from the enemy. We look around and we see other people thriving, quote unquote. We see other people, living out what we thought, and we think, no, but what about me? And what about mine? And where's mine? And forget about this or that. I need to do what I need to do. Right? Or I need to have this security, or I need to feel like I've got this much in the bank, and if I do, then I'm going to be okay. Or I look around and see someone, and there's this envy, this lie of envy that tries to steal the seed. And what he's ultimately trying to do is he's trying to rob you of the production Jesus was talking about 30, 60, or 100 times. And so he talks about fruit, right? Which, if you've been around church for a long time, you're totally comfortable with that word. If you're new to church, you're like, fruit, my fruit? Like, what are you talking about, right? And so for those people, I include myself because I love to think about it a little bit differently. I love to think about effectiveness, right? Your effectiveness for God. He wants to get in and steal your ability to be effective. Or another word might be evidence instead of fruit. Like, if you read through the New Testament, and when you see fruit, you could kind of change it for evidence. There is evidence that you are with God. And some of us, if we're totally honest, we feel like there's no evidence, right? And it's like, these lies come in and they're trying to take away the evidence. And there's this other idea that's just understood through this parable of fulfillment. So Jesus is here telling us, like, man, there's this soil that experiences fulfillment and blessing, and there's this evidence in their life, and we talk about give and you shall receive, and we talk about all these other things, and there's people, that are seeing it happen. And then there's other people who maybe they want it to happen, maybe they tried for it to happen, but the devil shows up and he's lying, and he gets them to get worried and tired and frustrated and discouraged. And because of the discouragement and the tiredness and the worry and the frustration, they're not experiencing the same thing. And so as I read through this, and I was studying it this week, and I was reading through it for this series, I was thinking, man, it hit me. It's like all these things he names, deceitfulness of wealth and worry and problems of this life and persecution. And Jesus wants to be the answer for every one of those things. Like Like the sower, Jesus himself, and you know, our heavenly Father is the sower in this example, but he wants to be our answer. He wants to be the one that gives you peace. He wants to be your provider. He wants to be the one that reveals his plan for you. So what we're doing when we're letting the enemy come in and steal our seed is we're taking our eyes off him and we're putting it on the enemy. For some reason, he's not big enough. So I want to switch gears, and I want to tell you guys a story about these recorders, okay? This is such a blessing that you guys are getting involved in this. And I want to kind of tell you guys how it came about. So I've been in Mexico for 13 years, and I have, since I first got there, my state, the state of Nayarit, which Matt totally pronounced like a pro, right? But that state is one of the poorest states in Mexico. And it is because of the mountain regions, which are throughout our state. There's several mountain ranges where there's still these people groups that are living as if it were hundreds of years ago in many aspects, and they're considered unreached people groups, and there's different dialects they speak. And since I've lived there, they've finished translating the New Testament. This is a new thing. This was not available when I was first in Mexico. It now is. I actually know the guy who's working on it. And so they finished that. I've heard all about these tribes and these people in the mountains, and I've never been up there. And so I live in the capital city of my state, which is Tepic, Nayarit, and I've heard about these places. I've met people that have come down from there. The thing is, it's an 8 to 10 hour drive to get up there, so it's not easy, and it's a slog. I mean, and in rainy season, you can't even get up there. You need a 4x4, or it's a 25-minute flight. Right? So think about that. 25-minute flight or 8 to 10 hours. So I just have never had a chance to go. And not so long ago, I was in Starbucks. A year ago, I was in Starbucks, which we now have in Tepic, which is obviously another sign that God loves us and cares for us. And so I was in Starbucks, and I meet this guy. He's a gringo like me, so we stand down. I was like, what's up? And we start talking. He's like, oh, I'm a pilot, and I fly up to the mountains, and I do disaster relief or medevac, and move supplies and other things. And he was like, oh, man. I told him what I did, and I was a pastor. He's like, oh, man, I was up not too long ago, and this guy came up to me. He's like, hey, man, are you a pastor? He saw his wife, thought I was a missionary, a pastor. And I was like, no, I'm just a pilot. I'm definitely not a pastor. And he's like, hey, we just started, this guy got saved. He's like, we started a church up here. We need some help. And if you know any pastors, please let them know. And so the guy's like, you should come up with me. And I was like, this is like my dream scenario unfold. Like, yes, I totally want to go. Let's go. And so we set something up. And before we could go, there was another disaster in another part of our state, and he was going to fly some supplies in. So he's like, hey, you should come with me. Let's fly out there. And I was totally pumped. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we get in the plane. We fly out there. I felt like a legit 100% missionary for a while. I'm like wearing the mud boots, bringing the disaster relief supplies. I was like, this is legit. Somebody take a picture. You know what I mean? And so it's like, so we did that, and we're flying back to Tepic. And I was half serious, but I was like, hey, man, can I fly the plane? And he's like, yeah. He's this super cool, like, laid back guy. He's like, yeah, fly it, man. Here. He's like, grab the stick and look at this number here. You want to keep it on this. And he's explaining to me, and I'm flying, and it was so fun. And I was like, hey, can we do a stall? And he did. He did like an aggressive stall. We lost power going straight up. It was amazing, right? So I'm into it. And so this guy's like super pumped that somebody's into flying. I feel like that's the thing. He's like, somebody cares about his profession and so he's all about teaching. He's like, man, you should come with me. I'll teach you how to fly. It's like, yes, whenever you call me, I'll come. And so we had a chance to go up to this mountain village. I actually have a picture of what it looks like outside of the window. This is while we're flying up into these mountains, right? It's absolutely beautiful. It's breathtaking, seriously. And so we take off out of Tepic. We fly up into these mountains where I've never been. And this is while we're in flight. We get there, and this guy's got this little church. It's so cool. I have a picture of the church. This is their little church they've built up in this mountain village. That's the pastor. His name is Pascual, and he's a Cora. And so we get there, we hang out, we flew up, and we did a service. I had a chance to preach up there with them, and I was just looking around like, man, we can really help these people. We can really help. Like, this is awesome. We hung out and had lunch. I had to get a picture of the food. I'm super into food. Look at that. Tell me that does not look glorious. That's blue corn tortilla, freshly picked. And as it was cooking, I was like, God, kill the bacteria with that fire, please. Right? Because I watched them grind it, pound it out, throw it on there. I was like, okay, this is not going to end well. But it did. I was totally fine. He heard my prayer. And I actually have a picture of me with, Bill had gotten me one of these a while back to test it out. So that is me 100% checking, and it is 100% legit, real. This is their language. And so the dude hit play, and it was like, whoa. It was actually really cool to see. It's like, whoa, that is our language. Like, and he's hearing the Bible in their language. And so there's a lot of people out there. So they have that little church you saw, but he also walks like 4 hours walking at a time to these other villages where they have other cell churches that he helps lead. And so these are going to get distributed far and wide. Like to the ends of the earth far and wide, okay? Like, seriously, like, they are going to go places where I will probably never set foot. I mean, a 4-hour walk from this remote village into another even remoter village. And so it actually is super, super cool thing. And I've got one more picture, I think, of what it looks like from the air flying into one of these villages. So you can see the runway there, kind of near the top. And it's just a beautiful country and experience. And so anyway, thank you for the pics. That's good enough. And so we're flying, right? And we go up there and we see it, and I preach, and I was like, we have to help. We have to do more. So I go back to Topeka. I'm so excited. I'm like, all right, kidsman guy, like our number one kidsman. We got to go. Get your stuff. We're going to go in a couple Sundays. Worship. Guitar, bring it. We're going to sing. We're going to take over. We're going to lead. It's going to be awesome. I mean, a Sunday, we're going to help them out, right? And so I get people. I got someone to go hang out with the women up there. We load the plane. We get chickens and all this stuff. We cooked chickens, not live chickens. Like chickens that we're going to eat for lunch, right? And so we load up the entire plane with all this stuff. And we get there, and I'm fired up. I drove everyone out there. I'm like, we're going to go. It's going to be awesome. And we get there, and the pilot, he's fired up too. And so we get there. He's like, hey, man, today you're sitting in the left seat, and you're taking off. And I was like, sweet. And everyone looked at me like, whoa, wait, what? Like, you never, they're like, Pastor Josh, are you a pilot? Like, no. Saddle up, right? And so we all get in the plane, and I sit in the left seat. I don't know why this pilot has so much faith in me. I honestly, to this day, have no idea. But we get in the plane, and he's like, all right, man, drive to the runway. It's just like driving a tractor. I'm like, I've never driven a tractor in my life. I'm from Chicago, right? So we get in the thing, and I literally, no joke, could not get it to the runway, okay? Could you imagine the terror of getting into an airplane for the first time and the pilot not even being able to get you to the runway? It was like, he's like, I mean, I was trying, so it was like, I mean, literally, we're bobbing and weaving onto the grass, trying to get it back onto the, and so we finally get to the runway, and, full throttle, we're going down, and I'm freaking out. He's helping, he had to help me take off, and there's 2 yokes, so it's okay. Girl in the back seat, true story, throws up, vomits, right? And I felt terrible because we're doing this the whole time I'm flying, which is like terrible, I guess, for your stomach. And so we land, and we're a little bit late, and we got to start the service, and so I feel bad. She's like cleaning herself off, starts worship, and I preach, and it's beautiful. It's such an awesome experience. If you guys come, I'll fly you up there, right? And so anyway, a couple of days later, he's like, hey, I have to fly down. We'll go, just you and me. Just you and me go. I was like, yes, please. I felt so bad. The girl's puking in the back seat. So just me and him, we go. We get to the runway. He's like, all right, this time do it by yourself, right? So we're on the runway, and I floor it. And you got to kind of keep it steady, which I was so impressed with myself. I was like, I'm doing it. And so we pull back on the yoke. We take off. And as soon as we take off, we're like 300 feet off the ground, he takes the flaps off. And there's like a change that happens. If any of you have flown, or you would know. And he's like, all right, you're too far back. Push it forward a little bit. A little bit being the key word there. And I was like, all right. And I push it forward too far, right? And we're like 300 to 500 feet off the ground. And I push it forward, and there was like this moment of weightlessness, like in a roller coaster, like this moment of like your stomach where you feel it come up. There was that for like a millisecond, and then we were looking at the ground, right? And then it was like, oh! Yeah, like, may or may not have cussed. Pastor Matt's sitting in the front row, so I'm definitely not going to say that I cussed. But went over, saw it. It was like, there's a moment of like, oh my gosh. And he immediately fixed it, and he was like, hey, it's cool. He's totally cool. He didn't embarrass me. He could have. And we fly down. We're flying back. And again, I'm flying, and I'm trying to figure this thing out with the charts. And he's like, he's yelling me the whole time, look out the window. Do not look at your gauges. Look out the window. Do not look at your gauge. And I'm trying to figure out this, because we're going to land in Topeka. And he's like, look at your, watch your rate of descent, but look out the window. And I'm looking at the gauge because you can see it, and the needle's like way down. I'm like, why is the needle so far down? And I'm staring at it, and he looks at me, and he says it this calmly. He looks at me, and he goes, we are literally diving at the ground right now. It's literally how he said it. We're literally diving towards the ground. And I was like, oh. And he's like, if you don't like fat, you can pull back on the yoke, and we'll go up. And so I did, and we landed safely. I'm still here today, obviously. But he literally said to me the first time I got into the plane, the first time I ever got in, that first day, when I asked him to the stall and I asked if I could fly, he was like, man, I have been an instructor for years in the U.S. He said, there is literally nothing you could do that I could not get us out of. And it stuck with me, and I 100% believe him. I tried, honestly. He proved it to me, right? But when he looked at me and said, there is nothing you could get us into that I could not get us out of. And I cannot stop thinking about that with God. And we talk about this parable. We talk about what God has for us in the production, what he wants for us. what he died to do for us, what he died to give us. And we have this enemy lying to us nonstop. And at the end of the day, you need to understand something. Your heavenly Father looks at you. He looks at you and says, listen, there's literally nothing you could do that I cannot save you from. There's literally nothing you have done that I cannot save you from. There's literally nothing, not a single financial decision, not a sin issue. There's nothing that we have done that he cannot make well. And there's lie after lie after lie that tells you, no, now it's blown. You've blown it. It's never going to be the same. Yeah, you were here and it was awesome. You lost it. Your chances are. There's lie after lie that, no, well, what about your retirement? What about this? Or forget about that. And what about, and there's these lies that are constantly trying to rob you of what he wants to do in your life. And he's looking at us saying, listen, there is nothing, there's no distraction, there's no sin, there's no addiction that I cannot make well in you. And so my big point, my only point is this: the condition of our soil depends on how we see the sower. Right? If he's this hard man, in fact, there's another parable that says, if you've heard the parable of the talents or the bags of gold, and the one guy who didn't produce anything says, I knew you were a hard man, who collects where you did not sow. And you hear that, and I just picture Jesus like, what are you talking about? Where did you hear that? That's not true. And so many of us, we see Jesus that way. We think, oh man, I'm done for now. It's never going to be the same. And AJ, if you could come, there's a story in Revelation 5. I was thinking about during worship. In Revelation 5, there's a scene where they're looking for someone who's worthy to break a seal, and they can't find anyone who's worthy. And so many of us, the enemy has used this lie to rob us of our production, our effectiveness, our usefulness, the fruit or the evidence that we serve Christ. He's been using this lie to rob you of this. You're 30, you're 60, you're 100. You're more than enough. Your financial blessing. We believe in finance. We believe that he has more than enough. That he will supply your every need according to his riches and glory. We believe that. It's not some hope or maybe. We believe that's true. We believe that he will guide you in your purpose. And the enemy comes with this lie that, yeah, but not for you. And so in Revelation 5, they're looking and there's no one that's worthy. And it says, it's so cool. I don't know exactly what verse. You can look it up in Revelation 5. And it says that there was a lamb who was standing, but looked as though he had been slain. And that's obviously Christ. It's obviously our Savior. And then it says that he was worthy. And that's where the famous saying or song of worthy is the lamb that was slain. Worthy is the lamb. And you know what? If the enemy's been lying to you and saying, no, but yeah, you this is not for you. He's trying to steal your seed, saying you're not worthy. Look at him and, yeah, but worthy is the Lamb. And we believe that this church is going to grow because worthy is the Lamb, and you're going to be blessed because he is worthy, and your kids are going to be protected because he is worthy, and your future is secure because he is worthy. And as these lies come to try to take away that, no, he is worthy, and because he is worthy, I'm forgiven, I'm protected, he's going to provide for me, my kids will be okay, our situation, even if it looks dire, he is worthy, he is holy, and because of what he has done, we're going to believe for complete victory. We're going to walk in the victory that he died to give us. And when that happens, when you get that, then all of a sudden we just live it. It's like, yeah, I mean, and I love, right, how if you read Mark 4, which I would encourage you to do this week, he transitions from this parable into talking about a lamp on a stand. And it's almost like he's continuing to explain what he's talking about. It's like, yeah, so as this happens, as there's more evidence in your life, and along with evidence or fruit comes blessing, and you're going to be different. It's going to happen. Like, people are going to notice sooner or later. They're going to be like, man, you don't cuss nearly as much as you used to cuss, right? Or they're going to, I don't know, something's going to change. They're going to see you and they're going to be like, man, like, what? And he talks about the lamp on a stand, and it's basically saying, like, as he changes your life and continues to change your life, let it be shown. You don't have to hide it. You're not going to be one person in church on Sunday and a different person throughout the week and a different person at your job. Be the person that he is forming you into. Let it shine. I love the give it away idea. I love the live your story. I love what this church is doing. And I know that he wants to use you. He wants to use you. And don't look away. Don't think you're not. He is worthy, and he wants to use you. And he's going to use you as you. You don't have to fake. You're not going to be you don't have to. You just let him use you as he continues to change you. And we're going to believe that there is, just like it said in Mark 4, it's like you hear it, you accept it, and then there's fruit, then there's production, then there's evidence, then there's fulfillments. He says in Matthew 11, come to me those who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest for your soul. I'm rest, and that's, if we're honest, that's what we long for. It's just to be able to rest and take a deep breath on the inside and just know that our God is working. He does have a future and a hope and a plan, and it's real. And any lie from the enemy that says otherwise is a lie. He has created you for a purpose, and he wants to use you. He wants to provide for you. And so that's what we're going to believe. We're going to believe this church sees more and more evidence that you and your family, your marriage, your children, we're just going to believe that his hand is on it. I just want to pray.